Okay, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the rules of the game you're playing changed, but nobody explained those changes or why they changed? Like, you're still playing by yesterday's instructions while somebody else already installed the latest, newest update. That feeling usually shows up when big systems start shifting, and right now a lot of people can sense something shifting quietly. But now they're saying it out loud.
I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Today I want to talk about what people mean when they say New World Order, and I don't mean these guys.
Nash and Hall.
What it looks like when monetary systems start breaking down and why Bitcoin keeps getting pulled into the conversation whenever trust starts fading. This isn't meant to scare you, and it's definitely not meant to turn into a conspiracy movie. It's meant to help you zoom out and see the pattern. So first, the New World Order sounds like a dramatic phrase, but most of the time it's describing something very normal in history. The world's just rebalancing. Old systems stop working the way they used to, power shifts from one place to another, and new rules slowly replace the old ones.
The monetary order is breaking down. Okay. What I mean by the monetary order is that fiat currencies and debt as a storehold of wealth is not being held by central banks in the same way, and that there was a change. The biggest market to move last year was the gold market, far better than the tech markets, right, and so on. So let's just look at the fact that on the other side of trade, deficits and trade wars, there are capital and capital wars.
That doesn't happen in one day. It's more like you look back and realize the world feels different than it did 5 or 10 years ago, and the things that used to be stable feel a little less reliable. One reason this topic gets louder every year is because these big global meetings where political leaders, central bankers, and corporate executives gather and talk about the future. A meeting itself isn't automatically bad. The problem is the vibe that it creates for everyone watching from the outside. Because if you're at home, you're not in the room, you're not voting on the agenda, and you're not getting a say in the decisions that might affect your job, your savings, your cost of living, or the rules around money. And even if the intentions are mixed, some are good and some self-serving, but it's the perception that still matters. Because trust is one of the most important parts of any financial system. Once trust starts slipping, money starts behaving differently. Here's why. Modern money runs on confidence. A currency works because people agree it works. Bonds are basically promises. It's like, you lend me money now and I'll pay you back later. Your bank balance also relies on trust because you're trusting that the bank will give you your money when you want it and that the system around it stays stable enough to function. So when the world gets more tense, when countries start pushing their own interests harder, when alliances get tested, and when trade turns into power politics, people naturally start asking a new question. Do I still want to hold long-term promises from a system that feels less predictable? That's when you often start seeing markets acting strange. Bond yields can jump, currencies can weaken, and assets like gold tend to get attention. And Bitcoin pops back into the conversation. Not because everyone agrees on what happens next, but because fewer people agree on who to trust. Most systems don't collapse like a building falling down. They break more like an old machine that keeps getting patched. At first it's subtle, higher debt, more emergency support, more short-term fixes, more policies designed to keep everything calm. But everything works, it just needs more intervention than it used to. And that's what people start noticing. It isn't one event, it's a pattern. The system starts solving problems by delaying them, and delaying them usually means more complexity, more dependence, and more rule changes. That's also why you hear the word reset. When a system gets stretched too far, it has to adjust. Sometimes the adjustment is slow and quiet. Sometimes it's messy and obvious. Either way, resets often come with a shift towards more control because control creates predictability and predictability makes markets feel safer. One place this shows up consistently is money going more digital. Now, to be clear, digital payments are not scary on their own. Faster transfers and lower fees are great, and plenty of digital upgrades are just convenience. But there's another direction digital money can go, and that's what makes people uneasy. Money that becomes easier to track, easier to restrict, and easier to program. At that point, money can start to feel less like cash and more like access, like something you're allowed to use as long as you meet certain conditions. And this is where Bitcoin stands apart in a very simple way. Bitcoin isn't a promise from a person, and it isn't managed by a committee that can change the rules when things get uncomfortable. It's a rule-based system that anyone can verify. The supply is fixed, the schedule is known, and the rules apply the same way to everyone, whether you're a student, a business owner, or a government. In a world where people feel like rules keep changing, that kind of consistency becomes extremely valuable. Now, if you're watching, you're probably not here to trade every headline. You're here because your goal is long-term stacking, and that means the real question isn't what's the next news event. It's what's the plan that still works if the world gets even noisier. And honestly, the plan doesn't need to change very much. You can't control global politics, central bank policy, or international power struggles. You can't control what gets announced at a conference or what narratives show up in the media, but you can control your habits. You can stack consistently, you can think in years instead of days. You can learn self-custody at a pace that makes sense for you. You can choose ownership instead of relying on permission. This is the part people miss. In uncertain times, the loudest voices try to pull you into panic. Long-term Bitcoiners win by doing the opposite. We simplify, we focus, we keep accumulating with intention because wealth isn't built on one big moment. It's made through small decisions repeated over a long period of time. So if you want the takeaway, it's this. Big systems can shift, the world can rebalance, and the rules can change. That doesn't mean you should panic. It means you prepare, and preparation looks boring. Build a steady stacking habit, protect your time horizon, and move forward with real ownership. Let me know in the comments, are you focused more on accumulation this year, or are you working on self-custody and getting your Bitcoin off exchanges? Happy stacking!